Imagine 2 million years ago your ancestor was just another animal. Weaker than a lion, slower than an antelope. No fangs, no claws, no fur. By all the laws of nature, it should have gone extinct. But something went wrong, or rather, something went accidentally right. And that very accident created the human being you are today. Let's figure out what it was. Accident number 1, meat and bone marrow. 5 million years ago, our ancestors didn't hunt almost anyone. They scavenged what predators left behind. Lions ate the meat and moved on. They didn't touch the bones. And inside the bones was bone marrow, high-calorie, rich in fats, something no one else could reach except us. A rock plus a bone and access to energy that no other animal on the savannah could get. That energy didn't go into muscles. It went into the brain. The brain is the most energy-hungry organ in the body. It weighs 2% of body mass but consumes 20% of all energy. Without that fatty bonus from bones, the brain simply wouldn't have had the fuel to grow. Accident number 2, fire. No one invented fire on purpose. It was most likely just found. Lightning struck a tree. Someone wasn't afraid to approach, and that fear, or lack of it, changed everything. Fire gave not only warmth, it gave cooking, and cooking was a hidden revolution. Raw meat takes a long time for the body to digest. It consumes a huge amount of energy. Cooked meat is absorbed several times faster. The freed up energy went to the same place, the brain. Anthropologists have calculated that without cooking, digestion would have required so much energy that an enlarged brain simply couldn't have existed. A random spark at a tree literally rewired our anatomy, but fire did something else too. It created a night that could be survived. Before fire, the day ended at sunset. It got dark, you climbed a tree, froze, survived. Fire pushed that boundary by 3-4 hours. It sounds like a small thing. But in reality, it was the first extra time in the history of the species. And here's what people did with that time. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied the Bushman tribes in the Kalahari Desert, some of the last people on Earth living almost like our ancestors. During the day, 80% of conversations were practical. Where's food? Where to go? What to do, but at night around the fire, everything changed. 81% of conversations became stories, myths, jokes, tales about people from distant places. The campfire became the first theater, the first school, the first place where a person began to think not only about now, but about things that didn't yet exist. Stories passed on knowledge without the need to experience everything firsthand. The one who heard the story about a poisonous berry didn't have to taste it themselves to die. Fire didn't just keep warm, it became humanity's first textbook. Accident number 3, life in a group. One person on the savannah, food, a group of people, a threat to predators. But a group is also a problem. You have to share the kill, you have to negotiate. You have to remember who helped you and who deceived you yesterday. A brain that could maintain more social connections got more food, more protection, more chances to pass on its genes. So sociality itself became pressure on brain size, not because someone decided to get smarter, but because the stupid ones were cast out of the group first. And from this, one more accident was born: language. At first, there were sounds and gestures. Danger, food, here. But a group that could warn about a predator a second earlier than others survived more often. Language wasn't invented in a day. It slowly boiled out of the need to tell each other something faster, more accurately, more clearly. And every small improvement in communication, again, required more brainpower to understand and remember it. And here's the most unexpected part. Scientists call it accidental feedback. More meat, right arrow, more energy, bigger brain. Bigger brain, right arrow, better tools, right arrow, more meat. More meat, right arrow, bigger group, right arrow, more language. More language, right arrow, more planning, right arrow, more survivors. This wasn't a strategy. It was a wheel that started turning on its own and never stopped. The strangest thing is that none of these changes were a goal of nature. Evolution doesn't plan, it just keeps what worked. And every time a slightly smarter, slightly more patient, slightly less cowardly ancestor survived, it nudged the species a little closer to what we've become. But there was a side effect that almost no one talks about. The smarter humans got, the more they began to fear, not predators, not hunger, but the unknown. Imagination is the same ability that allowed people to tell stories around the fire, but it also allowed them to invent monsters in the dark that weren't there. Scientists believe that the fear of darkness is a byproduct of the same brain that learned to plan, imagine, and foresee. As it got smarter, humanity paid a price. It became the only species that fears what doesn't exist. Over 2 million years, brain volume grew almost threefold, not because someone decided to get smarter, but because a series of accidents, bone marrow, a lightning strike, fear of exile, the first words around a campfire, converged into a single path. And that path led to you. If lightning had struck a different tree. If that first person had been afraid to approach. If the group had cast out the best instead of the worst. If no one had told the first story by the fire, we might still be scavenging leftovers from others' hunts, silent, in the dark, alone. Instead, you're reading this on a screen made by a brain that grew out of a series of accidents. Every word you understand exists because someone once wasn't afraid to approach the fire. Every thought you have about the future exists because your ancestors learned to imagine what isn't there yet. Maybe you're not so special. Maybe you're just the result of the longest chain of coincidences in the history of the planet. But it's this very chain that made it possible for you to be thinking about it right now. And that, in itself, is something incredible.